hope that it is not a typical Wednesday at your house like it is here, because you know what can go wrong will, right?
It is.
But we are smiling through it, and we are so excited that you bore with us just a little bit, because we have such a treat for you today. So let's get started with 3 Things Live. Where thing number 1, something to make you smile. Thing number 2, something to learn. And thing number 3, something to discover. Let's go. Welcome back. I am so excited for today, and we have such a great show. A couple of things is thank you for bearing with us for just a second, and those of you that are struggling, I hope you can go back and watch the replay. If it's not coming in, great. But you know, if it never fails that when the boss is out of town, something goes wrong. So we just want to excuse Chris. She is with her family today, and we miss her. But that just means I get to have Jacki with me. Welcome, Jacki. Welcome.
Oh, so excited to be here.
I know. I'm so excited to have you. We have had a great week because we are introducing our new Stitch Your Story.
Yes.
And we have a new word. The word is freedom.
Freedom.
We also have a special guest today that I cannot wait for you to spend some time with her.
Yeah.
We have Susan Goldman Rubin with you, and she is going to talk about the Quilts of Gee's Bend. And I finally we finally could ask her whether it was Gee's or Gee's, and it is Gee's Bend.
Oh, it is
yes,
Gee's.
It is Gee's Bend.
Okay,
yes.
Good. I'm glad to know that.
Yes, but it is an incredible story, and so we want to recognize Black History Month for February. But let's talk a little bit about Stitch Your Story. If you are just joining us and you're like, I don't know what Stitch Your Story is, Stitch Your Story is kind of a movement we're trying to create where we are asking you to make your own legacy block. A quilt, you can make a block, you can make a quilt, you can do whatever you want, but every month we give you a code word, so to speak, but it's just something to spark your imagination, and this month it's freedom. So the only rule we have, and it's not even a rule if you want to do something different, is that your unfinished block size needs to be 12.5 by 12.5, because we will give you instructions on how to finish your legacy quilt. But Stitch Your Story is every quilt is going to be different. It's
going to be so fun. I've loved seeing all of your inspirations and all of your blocks. It's been so fun to look. I've become inspired by it.
Well, you made your block, and you were inspired with your log cabin story. But we wanted to recognize 2 stories from last month, and so send your stories in, post them on Friends of My Girlfriend's Quilt Shop, but we wanted to recognize 2 that kind of stood out to us in Stitch Your Story, and they don't know we're doing this. So we're really excited. So what's our first one, Jacki?
Okay, do you want me to read?
Just tell us just a little bit about it. You don't have to read the whole thing.
Yeah, well, this is about Leanne. We probably should just, Leanne Peterson. We ought to have her be on and tell us about her.
All about her blog.
She happens to be in the studio with us today.
I know. She's like, don't show me, don't show me. Leanne has joined our crew. Really recently. And so we're so excited to have her. But her story is an incredible one.
It is. It is. I mean, she said the first thing that crossed her mind was no way. Which, you know that? I think that a lot of us, I don't need another thing on my plate, she says. And which is probably true. But then I had this strange urge to download the list and take a closer look, she says. Last night she couldn't sleep and kept thinking that she should give it another read. So as she was sitting at her computer flipping through the topics for each month, this overwhelming feeling hit her. I knew I just had to do this, she said. So she started jotting down a list of what she wanted to create for her blocks for the month. And then today she finished her January block. And here is a picture of a block that she did. Lemon, she says, has always been something special in her heart. her dad passed away in 2010, and he gave her the nickname Lemon. Oh, that's so sweet. I asked him why, and he said, it was because my hair was lemon, was so blonde when I was young, and it just fit. Oh, that's so cute. Later, she learned that what it meant to call someone a lemon, and when I asked my dad if he thought I was no good, he said, not at all. I joked with him for many years about being a lemon, no good, but deep down, I loved that I was the only one out of his 6 daughters that he gave a nickname to. Isn't that fun?
I know. It makes me tear up. I mean, I've cried every day this week, so.
And the funny thing is, she says that she's allergic to lemons.
I know.
So that, isn't that sweet?
Yes,
So,
I mean, absolutely. So shout out, I'm glad. I hope she doesn't care that I shared this, but I did get a preview of her next block. I hope when it's finished that she will share it, and it is absolutely incredible and another tearjerker.
Well, I love lemons, and lemons make me happy.
Right.
I mean, so.
And Leanne makes us happy.
Yes. So it's really fun, and that's what's so endearing.
Yes.
Is when people share their stories, and it just makes us connect even more. I mean, we're always connected as a community, but it just has made it even more special.
Well, our second,
Allison,
I know, I'm crying all the time. I'm good. I'm good. Our second block is by another one of our girlfriends, Heidi Todd. So Heidi, shout out to you. She did 2 things that really stood out to us. The first one is she took the challenge when Chris and Cindy did their collage quilting.
Yes.
Is she jumped in and she's like, I'm gonna try this for her block. And she made a beautiful arrangement of geraniums.
Oh, I love geraniums.
I love geraniums too. It reminds me of my mom. She always has a yard full of geraniums. Now, my husband's allergic to geraniums, so I've got to love them from afar. But they reminded her of her grandma, and she thinks that's where she gets her love of gardening. Now, one thing about Heidi is she also downloaded and shared her story, and we have a free download on Stitch Your Story, so that she could write that down and share her story. So she included her first journal entry in that beautiful geranium block, which is red, my favorite color, that reminds her of her grandma. And so those are just a couple of shout outs to some of our girlfriends.
It's so fun.
Yes, and also we have Judy from Idaho in the studio with Leanne.
Yes,
so
exactly. I know.
Yeah, I know.
And
We're so excited to have them.
It's fun.
So before we move on, just a reminder, it's freedom, and we had a really great show yesterday and the day before about different takes on freedom. So Kyle and Sandra shared about freedom in your personal life and what comes with age or the time that you live. And then Sherry shared a really great message of freedom with our country and freedom in rules and freedom in maybe going outside the lines. And speaking of walking outside the lines, we are going to be right back because we have a special guest, Susan Goldman Rubin. I cannot wait. We are going to talk about this book right here, The Quilts of Gee's Bend. Gee's Bend. We
have to make sure we get it right.
I know. We've been so worried we're going to call 3 Things Live the wrong name, and now I'm calling it. So The Quilts of Gee's Bend, which is an incredible story about really cool. Some of the women and their quilting journey of Gee's Bend. And so we will join Susan right after this.
Calling all long arm enthusiasts. Come meet up with my girlfriend's quilt shop at the Handy Quilter headquarters in Salt Lake City. Learn from the pros and finally master the long arm quilting machine. If you are thinking of buying a long arm or just need some informed practice, then join us March 5th through the 7th. The pricing for this event is unbeatable, and we'll also be offering discounts on all the needed supplies. So, yeah, you can afford to come. For more information, visit us at mygirlfriendsquiltshop.com or click the link below.
On Monday, February 10th, we'll be joined by designer Amy Smart from Riley Blake Designs on 3 Things Live.
She's going to be showing us a new approach to jelly rolls and what's new in the sewing world.
So watch live at 1 p.m. Mountain and 3 p.m. Eastern.
Let's go!
Welcome back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm Allison.
And I'm Jacki.
And we also have a special guest who is joining us from her home in California. We're so excited that she could join us. She's right in the midst of where the fires have happened and some other things. So
my heart goes out to all of those there.
We just want to send our love. But we have Susan Goldman Rubin in the house with us today, who wrote this incredible story about the Quilts of Gee's Bend, about an African-American community in Alabama that has been around clear since the time when they were slaves, and they have an incredible story.
Yes.
So let's welcome Susan.
I loved it.
Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I feel like a fraud because I don't know how to quilt.
That was going to be our first question. Don't feel like a fraud at all, because you don't have to quilt, and we have quilters of all levels, so maybe we'll inspire you.
Yeah, but you were affected by a quilt, right? It causes emotion.
It does. I saw these quilts from Gee's Bend at a museum in New York, at the Whitney Museum, and I thought, oh my goodness, these are beautiful. I saw them as works of art. And I, as a writer for children and, readers of all ages, I very much wanted to know where they came from and how they came to be. And I started doing some research, and I am very proud to have done this book. It's been in print now for quite a while, and it's just an incredible story. Gee's Bend, and thank you for showing some of these patterns. For instance, the one on the right that you're looking at, the women used, each woman, these were descendants of enslaved people on a plantation, and they chose to stay there, the Petway Plantation. And the women would go out in the fields with their husbands and work, then cook supper. But while they were working, they would think up these visions of a quilt design. And each woman wanted to have her own quilt. No two quilts were supposed to look alike. And then they used scraps, amazing scraps of anything to create these incredible designs. Now that quilt on the right shows a quilt made by a woman who dearly loved her husband. And when he died, she took his old work clothes and pieced them together to make a quilt to remember him. And she said, I sleep under it for love. And I thought that gives me
wow, that just gave me goosebumps.
So these quilts really told stories. It just connects with your theme of telling stories of families. Each quilter made up her own design, and then as a community of women, they would get together. You must know all this. They had to put batting between the layers. I mean, these terms are new to me, but it's incredible. They were so poor. During the Roosevelt administration, they were given some help, as you could see with the mule, one mule, so many acres. You remember those phrases?
Yes.
How these women were so inspired to make art and create memories of their family. The word legacy that you use perfectly applies.
One of the things that really struck me about the book, Susan, is when they talked about the batting that you talked about, that it would really come in off of the field because they had no money, and they would beat the dirt and try to get it put back together before they would put it in the quilts. And just the dedication just to make a quilt, and that every scrap, nothing went to waste, that they would put that in there.
Exactly. And
well, in the quilts, go ahead.
Oh, well, there was a documentary film that was shown when I first saw these at the Whitney Museum in New York. And then the quilts went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I saw them again. But in a documentary film, the women said that working together on a quilt was like going to church. And they would pray and they would sing spirituals. It's just an amazing story of community and art. And in fact, when the collector who found these quilts came along and wanted to see them and pay for them, the women thought he was nuts.
Yeah.
I remember that. Most of our viewers have not read this book yet.
Yeah.
So it was not until our century, really, that he came along and saw these. And Kay Coley talked about the airing of the quilts. And they would actually hang these quilts out on their clothesline, right, Susan? I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
The women liked to display their quilts. They would hang them on the clothesline and go from clothesline to clothesline. One of the women said it was like going to a museum just to see the beauty of these quilts. And here's the amazing part, how this ties in with Black History Month. The quilts caught the eye of a civil rights worker. And in 1965, Dr. Martin Luther King decided to stop in their little community. And he preached to them late at night. It was a rainy night, and the women were, everybody was just thrilled. They said a light came on, and he invited them to go on to the town of Camden and then to Selma to march with him for civil rights. And the women and men didn't even know they had a right to vote. The people in that county of Wilkes had never voted. Black people had never voted. So when I told my editor this part of the story, he got so excited because it combined talking about women making incredible art with the civil rights movement. And that meant a lot to all of us.
Yes.
Right, Susan, one of the things that really strikes me, and we've been talking a lot about freedom this week, is how recent that was. I mean, that was not that long ago, that here are these beautiful women just surviving and not realize that their rights and the freedom that they have are so close, and that they fought for that.
Yeah.
I was so struck by the fact that after a hard day's work, in the field, they were so poor, and then cooking supper from who knows what, very little to work with, that they still had the passion for making art. I think that says something about humanity. We all need art, something beautiful.
Yes, we do.
My mom teaches school, and she really believes in arts in the school because it's something that our soul needs. And so I really love that. And I love that these women, because it talked about in your book about how they didn't have heat, that they could see through the floor and through the chinks and the holes in their wall. And so they were making quilts to survive, but to make them beautiful and to adorn their homes is just so touching to me.
They said to keep their families warm. And
Yes, I said.
The technique was, the patterns were handed down through generations, but each woman was supposed to make her own individual quilt. And one of the women said, no two quilts have to be the same. I'm just misquoting it perhaps, but they each wanted their quilt to be separate and special. Now, when I saw the quilts hanging in the museum, I thought, why are the bottoms so uneven? They weren't squared off the way many quilts are. And I thought, oh my goodness, people slept under these for years.
Or on top of them, or wrapped around them just to stay warm.
Yeah.
Yes, and can you imagine, I mean, as I think, because a lot of them came from clothes, and they talk about the corduroy and different things, but can you imagine the love and the wear that went into all the material before they made the quilt and then after they made the quilt, and that this material is lasting through generations?
Yeah.
And it's now being so as carefully preserved as a work by Rembrandt.
Yes.
In the museums, quilts that were, the women said, what, these old things? They're being, in temperature controlled rooms, like works by Rembrandt or Da Vinci.
Yes.
You mentioned school, and my editor came up with this great idea that really, really, I dreaded. He said, I think we should have an activity at the end, much the way you do on your show, to show how to make a quilt square. And as I told you, I have no idea how to make a quilt square, but I have a wonderful friend who's a children's book writer and a quilter. and her name is Ann Whitford Paul. So I did the smart thing. I called her up and I said, it could be like this. Can you help me make a quilt square? So you know what happened. I go to her house and she makes the whole thing and dictates the directions so slowly because she's a writer. And I thought,
funny.
what can I give her? And I dedicated the book to her.
Oh,
That's
my
great.
word. Well, at the end of the book, you have fantastic instructions on how to improv quilt, and actually Sherry yesterday used that
That's
to
fun.
make her quilt square. So you just know that you have inspired a quilter who is a seasoned sewist.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It's all due to Anne, a very generous friend. Children's book writers are very generous to each other. But
Well, what is your favorite story in the book?
my favorite story, I love that story of the woman whose husband had died and who took all his work clothes, his breeches, his shirt tails, everything, and made a quilt out of it, even though it's not one of the most beautiful quilts, because I loved seeing gorgeous patterns. But that one on the right, you can see
Yeah.
it's not as dazzling and or colorful, but it's her husband, and it's chock full of memories. No photographs. That's her husband, and she said she believed that the presence of a person came through the quilt. And
I
when
love
she
that too.
wrapped herself, I thought that was so beautiful. She wrapped herself in that quilt every night and felt his love.
Yeah.
You know, my favorite story was the one you opened the book with, Nettie Young. And Nettie Young, who 11 years old, and her mother just did not dictate, just gave her a scrap of quilts. And I think that touched my heart just a little bit, because I had a mother and a grandmother who would believe in that creativity, and it's where I got my love for quilting. And I remember sitting with them with scraps and sewing, just sewing and creating, and you know, sometimes it was Barbie clothes and sometimes it was blankets, and sometimes it was all of those things. But I just remember they didn't teach me the rules at first. They just taught me to create. Gosh, now look at me. Here we go.
Now you need the.
Now I need the Kleenex. But I really, truly, that touched me, and that's how you open that. And I just can't read it without crying. That, you know, that I think we're mothers and daughters and children's and creators and artists, regardless of how we do it.
Yeah.
Jacki, what was yours?
I said there was one phrase in the book that I loved that really stuck out to me, that these women would learn from each other, but it did not, but they tried to strive to be their own selves. So they had individual identities.
Right.
And I loved how they learned from the very beginning when they were young. And they didn't follow a pattern. They got inspiration from outside, from others, in dreams. Lots of really cool things.
Yeah.
I loved it. I was really touched.
Thank you.
Well, you have another book coming. So
Yes.
talk to us a little bit about that, Susan. I cannot wait. I have it on pre-order.
Okay, good.
Awesome.
May I hold it up?
Yeah, you
Yes.
can do whatever you want.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's called Dragonflies of Glass, the story of Clara Driscoll and the Tiffany Girls. And again, it's a story of a woman artist who did something so remarkable. She also loved flowers and nature. She grew up in Ohio. This was really about the same time, late 19th century.
I cannot wait.
That's going to be a beautiful story.
It comes,
And
isn't it
the
next
birth-
week?
The birthday of the book is a week from today.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You know, all those beautiful Tiffany lamps,
Oh,
the
yes.
flower patterns, it came to light just a few years ago that a woman had designed them, all of them. And because she and her sisters and mother sent each other what were called round robin letters, you know, telling what they were doing. And she drew the designs of the lamps in her letters. And this just
Wow.
came to light in
Oof,
2000.
That just gave me goosebumps.
Wow.
So it's a fantastic story, and I've been in a room of lamps in New York City. There's a place called New York Historical. That used to be New York Historical Society, now New York Historical, and they have a whole room of those lamps, and it's just beautiful. So I hope you enjoy the book.
I know. I think
New York City.
Do you want to go on a field trip with us, Susan? Oh, we would have a blast.
That would be so fun.
And by the way, this is Women's History Month, so it's Black History Month and Women's History Month. So that's how publishers choose to release the books. So this kind of corresponds. And thank you for your interest. I appreciate it so much.
Well, if you are looking for Susan's books, I got mine off of Amazon, and she's Susan Goldman Rubin. I love that a portion of your book, The Quilts of Gee's Bend, actually is donated to the quilt makers.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely.
Very much to me. I thought this is their work, and I'm just borrowing. I'm inspired and borrowing. So that was terribly important to me, and I worked it out with the collective that organizes the fees paid to the women, and they took care of that. And that goes on in perpetuity, forever, as long as the book is in print.
Oh, that just touches my heart. Is there any inspiring words you want to leave us with today?
Oh, I just love the way you encourage people to enjoy their own creativity. I think that's such a marvelous thing, and I love the way you focus on women cheering on other women and encouraging them to make things. Making things is just a wonderful
Doesn't
way.
matter if you sew or paint or write or sing.
Right.
Do something that makes your heart sing.
Yeah,
and
I
that
agree.
Encourages creativity.
Yeah.
Susan, will you come back and join us again? I can't wait to get your book, and I would love to have you again when we can spend a little bit more time.
I would love that. Thank you so much, I've been enjoying your show. Thank you both.
Oh my gosh, and good luck to you. And I cannot wait to talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Goosebumps.
Wow, that's all I can say.
I know, I'm so inspired. I'm so inspired, and I just want to sit here. I think I'm going to sit in this chair and just cry
and
for just a little bit of time after the show. And I hope that she touched your hearts as much as she touched ours. And I saw in your comments, those of you that are lucky enough to see these beautiful quilts and displays, and definitely on my bucket list.
Yes, the one thing I loved about it is how bright. A lot of them are very bright with bright colors, and just the fact that they took everything, clothes, and
you can see some of these pictures, and I hope that this will do it justice, but if not, order this book. That they have newspapers in the back, just newspapers lining their
trying to keep
walls, trying to keep warm, and just absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend this. Good, Abby has a picture of that she was able to put up. We are truly blessed. Yes.
That's all I can say is we are truly blessed.
Yes.
And we're grateful for those that, paved the way for us, and, that gives us these wonderful stories, that inspires us, that, wants us to reach out and help. And I don't know, it's just...
And what a lovely lady that Susan is, that she would recognize this and want to bring these quilts to the world.
These women, sacrificed a lot.
Yeah.
And so, and it's interesting that we still do those kinds of things. We lay out our quilts so that people can view them as well. We have trunk shows, and we have that kind of thing.
Yes.
So, it's very inspiring.
Wow. Wow, I've been so excited today, and it did not let me down. We will be back in just a few seconds because we are going to discover one more freedom.
Ah, fun.
Last week on Three Things Live, we launched Operation Organization.
We looked at your sewing rooms and, well, you need a little bit of help. No, trust me, we do too.
So we invited our good friend Corinne Wells from Riley Blake Designs to show us how to fold and store your quilts.
Suzanne shared a creative way to use up your scrap fabric. Vern helped us find ways to get a little more organized. Then we finished up by adding a little bling to our iron cases.
It was another week of Can't Miss TV on 3 Things Live. Join us every Monday through Wednesday at 1 p.m. Mountain and 3 p.m. Eastern. Can't join us live? Watch it on demand via Facebook or YouTube by clicking the links below.
3 Things Live is where we always have something to make you smile,
Something to learn.
and something to discover.
Let's go!
Well, Jacki, we're back.
Yes.
And we have one more freedom that I would like to share
Okay.
my block with you
Well,
today.
and this is a real tender story as
All right.
well.
So I created my freedom block. And those of you that are seasoned quilters might know that this is called the crown and cross block. And I only did half a crown and cross. And it represents what I chose for freedom, and it is religious freedom.
It's really
And I hope I can get through why I chose this, because I have a really great experience. I was lucky enough at my last job to be able to work in China sometime, and you know, there's something about traveling outside of the United States that immediately makes you realize what freedom means on a lot of different levels, especially when you go through an airport where they're standing guard. Like in Korea, they stand guard with machine guns and different kinds of things, and you realize what your freedom is. But I debated sharing this story, but I'm not going to use any names or anything. I had some pictures, and I said, but I had a colleague in China who was a Chinese national, and he had converted to Christianity. Now, in China, it's illegal to practice Christianity. And so if you get caught practicing your freedom of religion, you could be imprisoned for the rest of your life. But if you got caught congregating, then you could be put to death. And so as a Chinese national, freedom of religion was so important to him that if you practiced, I mean, for us expatriates or people, they would stand at the door of where we would congregate, and they would check our ID to make sure that we were U.S. citizens, and then we would be allowed to go in and worship as we so chose. But if you were a Chinese national, then you could not do that. And so he would congregate in different buildings and teach Christianity to these Chinese nationals at the risk of his own life.
Losing, because isn't it, I mean, if they caught it, they could just execute him then and there.
Yes.
I mean, there was no trial or anything.
No.
And that's what's so scary.
And so it really brought to mind that not only the risk that freedom of religion brought to him, but just our freedoms. And so that's why I chose my block.
I love it.
I think of him often. His wife, has left China and is here in the United States, but he goes back and forth. And so I really wanted to kind of capture that. So what I did is I chose my crown and cross block, but then I also added an American flag and a Chinese flag for that story and for this gentleman who is a hero to me for the choices that he makes, but also to remind me what being free means. And so I just wanted to share my block because there's so many different freedoms that we could have. And I want to encourage all of you to think about freedom this week. I mean, we're wrapping up the week, and so think about freedom. What does it mean to you, and how has it impacted you? And make your 12.5 inch by 12.5 inch block and share your story with us, because we learn so much. And you never know who you're going to inspire or touch. I'm sure that my little Chinese friend had no idea the impact he made on me. But it has really touched my heart that I am so free to do the things that I want every single day, and to have my own opinions and my own religion and my own ideas. So that is where my block comes from. So I will be adding that in my quilt. I'm so excited. And It's been a great day.
Yes,
it's been a
it
great
has.
week.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me today.
This was
Jacki.
this was so wonderful.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. You know, I really appreciate everyone. You know, there's so many sacrifices that people make because of something that they really truly believe in.
Yes.
And you know, it's part of their soul. And so it was just really great to read the book and to listen to your story. And you know, I really do. I appreciate where I'm from and how blessed I am. And yeah.
And thank you to all of you that have touched our lives. And you're free to make a choice and you choose to spend some time with us. And we are forever grateful.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we miss Chris this week. I mean, I know she was sad to be away this week. So sending her lots of love and hugs, and we miss her. And join us next week. We have a really, really fun week. If I can say anything, desserts first.
Yes,
so,
I said. Yummy.
And we will see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.